that I think that the only way which is sort of semi-acceptable in adults to talk about sex is through these dirty messages or non-veg jokes, if you may have heard, right? Which has a double meaning connotation. So you see how there is a shame involved about that. It's known as dirty jokes or dirty messages. Why, right? Why have we decided as a society that talking about sex or anything related to that becomes dirty all of a sudden? Before I go ahead, I have a couple of poll questions for you. Let's take less than a minute to answer both of these questions. The first question is, growing up, or even now, even in your adulthood, do you have any questions or concerns about your body or your sexuality or any of the other topics that Rishi was talking about earlier? Anything which is related to even sexual health, anything related to communication with your partner, etc., that you wish you had someone to discuss, or you wish somebody had come and spoken to you about some of these things. And that's the first question. The second one being, have you ever received any form of sex education from any professional or any other reliable person, right? So not information. I know that most of us gather our information from the internet or by maybe talking to somebody we are comfortable with. But apart from that, did you receive any sort of formal, semi-formal advice or guidance or knowledge about sex education? The first question said 59% of you have said that no, you maybe did not have these questions or concerns while growing up, and maybe that's okay. Maybe I'm also wondering if there was not any safe space for you to also bring up these questions, or maybe you thought that these are things that you figure out on your own, that you don't really need to have discussions with someone about it. But I also see 41% of you have said that yes, you do have questions about when you're growing up, be it related to puberty, or your sexual experiences, or even your own sexuality, or what you prefer, what you not prefer, or even in terms of communicating with a partner about what you like, what you don't like. Is that even a topic that should be considered or discussed, right? We do have these questions when we've grown up, and it's a very natural part of being human to have these questions. It's very healthy to have these questions, and it's even and that's what we are hoping to do, to create a space where these questions can be asked and these concerns can be answered. Right. I also see that 65% of you have not received any form of sex education from any professional. Well, I also see 35% of you did, and I'm really glad that that such a space was created. In fact, in our earlier sessions, conversations with individuals, most of them, in fact, I think I can very easily say 80 to 90% of them did not have any formal sex education. I think that the kind of sex education we received was the 8th standard biology textbook, where we learned about the reproduction system and the first time that we saw those organs. And I think or even maybe in school, all the girls were taken separately to be discussed about what periods are and given sanitary napkins, etc. So that's how limiting sex education has been in our country and in the education system. And we want to, I also want to say that the impact of lack of sexual education means that people are unaware, they are misinformed, they do believe all of these myths that exist about, if masturbation is harmful to you, or if you can get pregnant without actually having penetrative sex, etc. So all of those myths that are there, that's what happens when we don't have accurate or enough information about any of these topics. It also means that people do become quite shameful about it, in the sense that whenever somebody brings up such a topic, it's a very hush hush, like ऐसी बातें नहीं कर सकते public में, we can't really talk about all of these things or even use the word sex. I'm wondering for many of us here, maybe this is the first time that the word sex has been used in such a setting, in a public setting like this, right? Otherwise, it's not something that we discuss in public. So when there is a lot of just not accurate information, lack of information about this, it also means that we are then becoming a part of society where there is a lot of stigma, where there is secrecy, which means that if any sort of violence or abuse is happening, nobody speaks up, whether it's the people involved or even if it's bystanders, people who are witnessing it happening, right? So this is, and I'm sure that this is something many of us can relate to, right? Like, how openly have we ever had conversations about any of these things, about gender, about sexuality, about sexual health, about violence, about abuse, right? I mean, in fact, we were just discussing yesterday amongst ourselves that I think that the only way which is sort of semi-acceptable in adults to talk about sex is through these dirty messages or non-veg jokes, if you may have heard, right? Which has a double meaning connotation. So you see how there is a shame involved about that. It's known as dirty jokes or dirty messages. Why? Right? Why have we decided as a society that talking about sex or anything related to that becomes dirty all of a sudden? And that is what we aim to address through sexual education. I want to quickly show you just a couple of examples of what comprehensive sexuality education looks like, right? So we saw so many topics that I'll come to towards the end as well that Rishi was talking about. I want to take one example from there. Now, we all saw in the news articles that child sexual abuse is extremely rampant, right? One of the things that we discuss with children, with adults who are working with children or interacting with children is this: body safety rules, right? Teaching them my body, my rules, right? So here we really encourage them to say no, right? And I know that, when all of us grew up, or even right now, we sort of expect children to do things that we want, like, go and touch the feet of your grandparents, go and give your uncle a hug, when we really always tell children to go and do that. And if the children ever say no, they don't want to do it, or they throw a tantrum or whatever form which is not a yes, the response that adults give is that, hey, you can't be this rude, you can't be disrespectful, you have to do this because they are your elders, because they are your relatives. So that's really the opposite of saying that, that they should respect their bodies or they should respect their choice when it comes to their own body. And that's what we want to talk about. We want to teach them that say no if you're feeling uncomfortable. We want to teach them how does discomfort feel in their body, so that if anyone tries to approach them or engage with them in any kind of inappropriate acts, they can speak up. They know what they are feeling, right? We really believe in also teaching them the proper vocabulary, right? Not telling them that your penis means no. Let's teach them the proper vocabulary for your body, for your private parts, for your organs, so that they can speak up whenever if something inappropriate is happening with them. Right? We teach them how to have a safety network in case something happens, in case somebody asks them to keep a secret, etc. We tell them that you don't have secrets from people within your safety network. So this is the kind of information that we really want, just one small piece of it, that we really want children to have, so that they know if they are going through any kind of abuse, so that they can speak up, right? Another such sort of form of education that we do believe in, and which Saaniya also mentioned in the beginning, which is that a lot of violence and abuse is rooted in gender inequality. Right now, one of the ways that we want to address that is that let's really reflect on what we are teaching our when it's boys or girls, what are we really teaching them? Are we teaching boys that, no, you can't cry, you have to be a man? So what they grow up learning is that they have to be the provider, that it's okay to be aggressive, that they can't express emotions because it's a sign of weakness. And on the other side, we are teaching girls to be submissive. We are teaching girls to be more tolerant. We are telling them to be the caretaker, or to be any of these words that you see in the images over here. And that's how these gender stereotypes, when the socialization happens in such a way during childhood, when they grow up, there is a lot of power difference between a male and a female. We know that, women are considered to be a minority group because of this power inequality. And because of that, there is an increase in, domestic violence, where usually, most cases, men is the abuser. And how in such cases also, most times women just suffer through for years, because that's what the conditioning has been, that they are taught to be tolerant, they are taught to listen to the man, to the husband, that they are, and even the fact that because of this, there's no there's no equality in even their education, right? Now I know that maybe a lot of us over here have not grown up in such an environment, and maybe all women that we know have gotten education. But most of India also resides in rural parts, where such inequality still exists, which means that most women even now are not financially independent. And when you're not financially independent, you end up depending on the man. So if you are in an abusive relationship, it's very difficult to get out of such a situation also. So this is how we want to create awareness, so that we can also eradicate gender inequality, which is sort of the root cause of all violence and abuse. Right? Now, this was just a couple of examples of how education, what education can look like when we talk about CSE. Apart from it, we also, a lot of the tools that we acquire through this kind of education is also about communication, about listening to your partner, about negotiation. Now, this for everyone involved, right? Not just for kids, or not just for women or a specific gender, right? This is the kind of general life skills that all of us can actually really use. Even decision making, or identifying abuse, identifying sources of help, challenging long-standing prejudices that we have about genders, about sex, etc. And at the very core of it, to protect and advocate for our own health and well-being, and for that of others, especially the minority groups, especially the children, and all of those. So, and just to reiterate what Rishi was also saying, I know that there are a lot of myths about sexuality education, but we do have, even if it's limited research, we do have research which consistently says that it actually doesn't mean that people start having sex more frequently or at a very early age. No, it's actually very delayed. It actually means that the person has the right information to choose which person they want to explore with, etc. Right? So here is our little, we are really hoping that all of us over here who are interacting with children in any way, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a relative, whether you are a parent, we really urge you to, one, inform yourselves about what some of these topics are, and two, talk to your children about it, whether it's in a big, at a school level, or at any institutional level, or at home. But we really do urge all of you to become more aware, to take this up, to talk more and more and more about it.